Hi, welcome to The State Room, a podcast dedicated to covering the key issues and events that will define the future of Arizona. I'm your host, Scot Mussi. Today on The State Room, we're going to be talking about the importance of mobilization when it comes to turning out the vote. Get out the vote efforts, or GOTV is what it's often referred to. The process of going out, contacting voters that usually align with your values and making sure that they're returning their ballots, turning out to vote. Historically, when it comes to these types of GOTV operations, they've been ran by the political parties or by the candidates themselves. But about 20 years ago, the left started pouring huge sums of money into outside operations, into their own operations that they had, to build their own GOTV campaigns. And it proved to be very effective. What they discovered is that by utilizing their own liberal infrastructure to conduct these GOTV operations, that they can do them not just more efficiently, but more cost effective than the traditional political parties. The conservative movement have been late adopters to this model, but the good news is that our side is catching up. And leading the charge in this effort is Turning Point Action. Turning Point Action, which was founded in 2019, has been working on building ballot chase programs all throughout the country. And now they have built a successful ballot chase program here in Arizona. To talk to us today about their ballot chase program is Joseph Kovertski, the Alliance Director or Administrator for Turning Point Action. Joseph, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad you could be here. Before we dive into the ballot chase program that you guys are building out and working on heading into the 26 election, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you end up working for Turning Point Action?
Yeah, I mean, my involvement in politics really started with Trump 2016. That's when I really got into politics generally, but my actual career with it started in college. I worked for a fundraising firm here in Arizona before I started reporting for the Arizona Chamber of Commerce for quite some time. Kind of got used to Arizona politics, the state politics here. Then I actually worked as a ballot chaser for Turning Point Action for quite some time.
So you actually have done the work?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, and that's really important. We do want all of our trainers and really all of our staff to be out there in the field to at least some degree.
Good.
We actually have a Register 100 program right now going on where all HQ staff members are required to get at least 4 registrations a month.
So you not only have to manage your crew, but you have to do it, make sure everybody's doing it, putting their own skin in the game and getting the work done.
Absolutely.
Good. So when it comes to ballot chasing, my experience talking with people is just general, that aren't in work for a political organization or spend a lot of time doing it. They either don't understand it or they completely underestimate the importance of ballot chasing and what it means. And so can you explain why ballot chasing is so important to Arizona elections or for any election for that matter?
Yeah. Ballot chasing, one, is important because of what you've already mentioned. The left has been doing this for a couple of decades now, and we really need to start playing catch up. And we were able to do so in 2024. And it was really effective here in Arizona with actually turning out the vote. So from our universe, we were actually able to turn out 86% of our voters. That's how we essentially determine our metrics, is how many voters did we turn out, not necessarily how many people we talked to or how many people we surveyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you talked about the 24 election. Was that the first major election that Turning Point ran a ballot chase program here in Arizona?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and that's what I thought as well too, because I remember just looking back at previous cycles, we've had some what I would call, especially in midterms, and this is what's coming up in November as a midterm election. We've had some turnout issues here in Arizona. I know that we did a review of the 22 election and quickly discovered that turnout among conservatives and Republican voters was actually lower in that election than it was in the 2018 election, and didn't even do as well as in the 2014 election. We had an underperformance by thousands and thousands of votes. It was kind of a big deal. And so do you think what you've kind of assembled now, that you're on track to be able to fix that problem heading into November?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's our main goal, is engaging the people here in Arizona. So it's not just through our ballot chasing program. We also have our Legacy Field program as well, which is really establishing relationships with local leaders here in Arizona. And they also run our coalitions as well. Our coalitions are like our volunteer force, and we often mobilize them as well to help turn out the vote too.
So we talk about the mechanics of ballot chasing and what it looks like. What are the components? Like you're going to say, you know what, we want to go out, we want to go chase ballots. What are the components that go into that successful program?
Yeah. Well, the way that we do it is what we call relational organizing. So we want our ballot chasers to go out there and actually build relationships with these voters before they're even really talking politics with them. We found that voters need a certain amount of touches before they're really going to be persuaded to go out and vote. So our process, we're targeting what we call disengaged voters. So these are 1x2s or less when we're looking at the last two midterm elections.
And what do you mean by 1x2?
Yeah.
Can you explain that so people understand what that means?
Yeah, of course. What I mean by that is they voted once or less in the last two midterm elections, so specifically 2018 and 2022. Okay. And we're looking at the midterm elections because they tend to have lower turnout than the presidential elections.
So you're looking at those, and you talk relational. I'm guessing you mean that's human contact. You're going out and making sure that individuals are getting face time with these prospective voters.
Exactly. They're creating face ID or face-to-face rapport with these voters out in their own neighborhoods. We only hire within zip codes, essentially. So people are working within their precinct or a precinct close to them.
So you're making sure community members are interacting with fellow community members and not just bringing in hired mercenaries from out of state or for some other location.
Precisely. The ballot chase program is really essential for that. It's really all about having those people in their own communities. A big part of it is actually bringing your voters out to community events and things like that, getting them more engaged in the community so that they find those local issues that actually bother them, that might actually motivate them to actually vote in November.
So when you're talking about that type of mobilization too, is this something that you've seen patterned on the left as well too? Is this how they do it as well?
Yeah, it is. This is how they really won Colorado. There's a very interesting book on this called The Blueprint and how they won Colorado over. And essentially this is exactly what they did. They started very small, changing the culture at the precinct level first.
Yeah, no, and that's a book I would recommend anybody that hasn't seen the Blueprint. If you're wanting the history of liberal infrastructure and how that's influenced state politics and how they've turned states throughout the country blue, the Blueprint was the book written about the pioneer movement for that in Colorado. And so I'm glad you brought that up. It's something that we have seen here and watched in Arizona. It's as we've watched the liberal infrastructure network get built here in the state. That's where it came from. That's how they do it. And the mobilization and what you're describing is a key component of that, at least here in Arizona, for sure. So how do you, I guess, when you talk about identifying prospective voters to contact, you mentioned the 1 of 2. Any other methodologies? Do you prioritize certain areas? I mean, or how does it go? Or you just go 1 of 2 every community?
So we prioritize certain areas. We call them super chase precincts. So this is a precinct with 100 or more chaseable ballots. And we really determine those ballots based off a couple of things. So these are the low prop voters, those disengaged voters I mentioned, but also new voters as well. And for us, we're looking at new voters as in people who registered after the 2022 election. So they may have voted in 2024, but we really want to make it habitual that they're voting in midterm elections. These people have never seen a midterm ballot before. And then we also look at what we call chaseable independents as well. So those independents who swing a little more to the right, and we are aware of that. So if there are 100 or more of those chaseable ballots or chaseable voters in a specific precinct, those are the areas that we're targeting.
How many precincts are we talking about here? What's the number of that you're thinking that are super chase or the ones that are the priority precincts?
So the way we do it is we actually combine the precincts out. So we take 1 to 3 precincts and we make them into territories. And from those territories, that's what each ballot chaser possesses, essentially. That's their territory of people that they have to chase. And then from there, we also have regions. The regions are what our managers cover.
So, I mean, it sounds to me like you guys probably have dozens and dozens of people on the ground already out there working.
Oh, yeah, we have hundreds.
Yeah. Are you guys fully scaled up now, or are you still ramping up for November?
We're still ramping up, and that's where the training aspect comes in as well. That's a big part of my role is actually training the ballot chasers to get them out in the field. So we're doing trainings about every other week now, and our class sizes usually average about 30 to 45 students.
So when your ballot chasers are out there and they're contacting these voters and they're interacting with them, what do you often hear from the voters themselves? What's some of the responses and reactions you get? Is it generally positive? Is it sometimes, you'll sometimes hear sometimes like people will push back and get mad for, saying, already voted or whatever. What's kind of the feedback you're getting when you're out there contacting voters in this process?
It really depends. What I've noticed most is a lot of voters are very apathetic. They think their vote doesn't count. And so that's something we always try to push. Your vote really does count. It does impact the state. I mean, Abe Hamadeh, for example, he lost in 2022.
They don't think their vote counts is like one of the number one things you hear?
That's one of the biggest things
That's
I've
scary.
heard. Yeah. And it's crazy because Abe Hamadeh in 2022, he lost a statewide race for attorney general by 280 votes. So yeah, every vote does at the end of the day count. We also hear a lot that people are just too busy or that they don't understand the process as well. And that's really what the ballot chasing is all about, is making the process seem incredibly simple for the voters and kind of walking them through it.
Yeah. This was probably about a month ago, but I did hear, I think, what your boss talking at an event about a little bit about this. He didn't have a lot of time to go into depth like you're able to now, but mentioned that one of the comments they sometimes hear is that from people that you guys already have determined had not voted, will tell you that they have already voted.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people think they're voting when they fill out perhaps like the presidential preference ballot. So that's something that we've seen in the past before. A lot of people can be confused by the actual voting process because it is made complicated these days, I think.
No, well, and just the ballot itself is complicated to fill out for a lot of people.
Think about how many races are on that ballot.
Yeah, and so so when I heard that, I was kind of like surprised, and as I started thinking about it, it didn't shock me. I can see how people would, because it's not even that, you have this complicated ballot, but then look at all the elections that we do have. Yeah. You have a primary, you have a general, you have these special elections, you have municipal elections that are off cycle, which, by the way, one of our big priorities and has been for over a decade is consolidating elections to reduce this confusion, because we do believe it does suppress voter turnout. Yeah. But we need to be able to cut through the clutter on that. We have to make sure that, as what you're describing, and I'm glad you guys are doing it, make it as easy for possible for people to understand and how to get their ballot turned back in. So now, you're not the only group out there. I hear from other groups as well that are doing various ballot chase programs and some good ones. And in fact, we help and do our own, try to do some of our own targeted ballot chasing, not at the large scale that Turning Point is doing, but I do see a lot of out-of-state groups coming in each cycle, pitching their own programs, large-scale programs, and what they say this is going to be the difference to changing the next election. In fact, I just heard from a group last week that was wanting to come into Arizona, and I'll never discourage wanting more people to come in and want to help our state, but I'm also oftentimes suspicious because whenever people are popping in for a cycle then leaving, I sometimes wonder how much skin they have in the game. And so what do you think separates Turning Point's ballot chase program from other large-scale ballot chase programs that maybe are trying to be ran by other organizations?
Well, it really depends on the organization that you're talking about. So they do use a very similar ballot chase model in terms of relational organizing versus transactional organizing. So a lot of them do focus on the relational aspect, building those relational relationships and following up with voters and having multiple touches before actually even talking about politics at all. But a lot of organizations also do the canvassing model. So the canvassing model is when you knock on a door and you ask someone some kind of survey question. We found that to not be as effective in actually turning out those actual voters. It's more about just reminding them to vote, and that doesn't often translate to them actually getting out to the polls.
I've also seen people come in and push a model of, they're going to spend money doing, phone calls or text messages and things like that. And I think those things are important.
They are. They certainly are.
But I see that as sometimes people think that is doing get out the vote. Yeah. That's or we're going to post a bunch of stuff on social media. That's get out the vote. What you're describing with the relational model and that, I've always believed is a cornerstone to making sure to take action on anything. Forget even just returning your ballot. We get active in trying to get people to engage at the legislature. If all we did was just send emails and phone calls, our response rate would be pathetic.
Yeah.
It takes the direct contact from us, that relational aspect you said. But you still see that. You see people going and trying to pitch these programs that are just text and phone calls. Yeah. How much do you guys mix that in? Or is that do you guys use that, or is it all relational in what you're describing?
We certainly do use it to a degree, but we always encourage our ballot chasers to organically get a phone number from their voters first before they're sending them a text, like a follow-up text, or sending them a call. So we always encourage that they have that conversation in person first and receive that phone number.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now looking ahead to 26, we're now about 5 months out from the November election. What do you see as your ultimate goal for Arizona? If you could have a dream scenario for Arizona, what would that look like?
Well, I think right off the bat, that's getting Andy Biggs elected, 2026. And for turnout, I think ideally that would be beating our last rate, which was about 86%. So, I mean, if we could get something like 90%, that would be fantastic.
86% on...
So basically what that means is 86% of our universe. So we
the universe you defined, or overall voter universe?
So the overall voters that we were targeting, we turned out 86% of those voters, which was about 315,000 votes. So
of the universe you're targeting, if you hit that goal in 26, how much of an ballpark? Going to give me an example. Yeah. Would that be an increase over, like, for example, what we saw in the 22 midterms, where it appeared that we kind of underperformed in our turnout? Yeah, no, I think if we even hit about 70% of our universe turnout, we should be fine. I mean, ideally, we're hitting something like 90%. 100% would be amazing, but that is unheard of. But something like 70% would actually be effective, because we've targeted or identified about 340,000 targeted voters for this cycle. And the margin in 2022 for that gubernatorial race was only about 17,000. So if we get 70%, which would be about 250,000 of those voters, you think we'll be in pretty good shape? Yeah, we'll be in good shape. Are you guys? I'm assuming that the program's active outside of Maricopa County. It is. One of the things that we saw was that, especially in some of the rural counties, which are heavily conservative, heavily Republican, we had some underperformance in some key counties in 22. So like Mojave, Pinal. Is Turning Point going to be pretty active in those? Yeah, those regions? Will be. And we were active in 24 as well. Mojave kind of had like the highest turnout per county for our universe. So that turnout was great fantastic. In 24. Yeah. It's 22. I keep looking back because I like to compare midterm to midterm. No, you always should. There is a difference. Presidential years historically have had higher turnouts, and then you run into more apathy problems in midterm elections. At least that's what we've seen historically. Yeah. Well, people are less motivated to vote, especially recently, at least with conservatives. People are often more motivated to vote because of Donald Trump. Are you seeing, as far as the motivation, are you seeing a lot of enthusiasm out there as you're talking with? Yeah, there's a lot of enthusiasm actually for Andy Biggs, especially because of his economic policies. People are really in favor of getting rid of the income tax. Good. Yeah. No, that's good to hear. So on the issue side, I'm assuming it's probably a lot of economy. Yeah. Cost of living. Is border security and immigration coming up still? Or? Border security is incredibly important. Andy has talked multiple times about how he wants to have consistent cooperation with the federal government. How important, as far as overlapping the candidates with the ballot chase? Is it pretty important as you're doing the ballot chasing, or is that coming up unprompted from people as you're talking with, as people are interacting with these voters? As in, are the ballot chasers going out advertising those candidates? Advertising, or is that coming up, or is this something where you're already seeing some engagement from people, like you talked about, Andy, that people are already recognizing the importance of getting Andy Biggs elected? I don't know if it's one way or the other, or if it's a combination, that it's just it's something that's an easy sale point for voters to encourage them to get involved and vote. I think it is an easy sale point, but we always encourage our chasers to really not talk about politics for those first few touches. So right now they're kind of laying the groundwork of really the whole project, which is creating that face-to-face rapport or face ID in your specific neighborhood, so people recognize you. So that come November, you knock on their door, or October during early voting, you knock on their door, and they recognize you as a friend, perhaps, or just a neighbor that they already like. And so they're going to be more persuaded to actually turn out to vote when you ask them about it. What do you think, if you could identify the biggest challenge you have going into the 26 election, what do you think that would be? What do you think is going to be the biggest obstacle you see in hitting your goals and being successful heading into November?
I think the biggest obstacle typically is just making sure that we have enough people out there in the field.
Well, then that gets to my last question.
Yeah.
For people that are maybe interested in getting involved, how can they join the effort at TP Action and make a difference heading into November?
So there are a couple ways that you can get involved. Get involved by actually applying to be a ballot chaser. That's tpaction.com/careers if they'd want to check that out. But also you can get involved without being in a full-time paid position. And that's through our coalitions program. So we have a bunch of different coalitions. Some are based on like issues, but basically anyone can join a coalition that matches whatever they want. Like for example, we have a moms coalition, which is for our mama bears. We also have a Gen Z coalition, so for our younger folks. And then we also have like a men's coalition as well, farmers and ranchers coalition too. So if you are involved with any of those kinds of things, you could volunteer, get to know your community a little better, and then come November, we always encourage those people to actually go out and chase as well. And that's kind of our Super Chase events, which are run by our Legacy field team. And it's kind of like Super Saturdays. We get people together, we get them energized with a big tent. Oftentimes there's a lot of merch that's being handed out. We usually have some speaker. Sometimes it's a candidate. Sometimes it's one of our leadership or someone from the Legacy field team as well to kind of get people motivated.
Oh, great. That's good to hear. So, Joseph, thank you for joining and coming on here to talk about the Ballot Chase program. And thank you, everybody, today that was able to listen to us here at the State Room, where we cover all the key issues and events that will define the future of our state and keep Arizona free. Thank you for joining us.